Immigrating to America means living in survival mode for years. Men work in low-paying jobs. Children attend poor schools. And women are often forgotten. To cope with the stress, to keep the family united and the morale high, they tend to focus on everyday life and forget about their dreams and passions. But one immigrant woman from Romania could not let this continue to happen. Her name is Marga. In Romania, she worked as a broadcast journalist until she was banned from broadcasting due to her political views. Then she evolved as a change maker. She was only 23 years old when she founded the Association for the Promotion of Women. 6 years later, Marga's nonprofit legislative advocacy effort led to a domestic violence bill signed into law by the Romanian Parliament in May 2003. On September 20, 2001, 9 days after 9/11, Marga migrated with her family to access life-saving medical treatment for her newborn son. After she experienced firsthand the plight of immigrant women, Marga created Empowered Women International, a nonprofit organization in the Greater Washington, D.C. area to give voice and create entrepreneurial opportunities for immigrant, refugee, and low-income women. Welcome, Marga.
Thank you.
I really can't say enough about how I feel about your organization, Empowered Women International. I believe what sets your organization apart from others is that it does not only empower women, but it sheds light, probably for the first time in American society, on immigrant women life, unique story and challenges, and empower those women. Now, I really have so many questions about your journey and your organization. And let's start with your childhood. As an icon of empowerment today, who empowered you as a child?
Well, thank you for all this beautiful introduction and the first heartfelt question. You know, I think it's my great-grandmother. It's often I do think about where did this seed of empowerment come from, and I was very blessed to have a great-grandmother who believed in me. She raised me for a couple of years along with my mom, but I had spent some quality time with my great-grandmother. And she had the ability, even though she had very little education, she had the ability to see potential, and to see potential in me at a very early age. We grew up very poor with very minimum resources, and to have someone as astute and wise as my great-grandmother to say, you can do whatever you want to do with your life, just be sure you follow your heart, I think had given me permission early on to accept my own truth and to discover my own journey.
Yeah.
And so,
you know, I'm curious about empowerment when it comes to women, because when at one point in my life I analyzed women, strong women, and I thought, oh, maybe, and even I wrote an article that titled Behind Every Great Woman, and I thought her father. I thought the father is the one behind every great woman. So do you think your grandmother was supported by her father somehow? And I don't know, do you think? No?
not in my story, no.
No, so you
I
don't...
wish there was an instrumental father figure. Not really, no. In fact, in the family I know, my relatives and great-great-parents didn't quite have strong fatherly figures. And I cannot, this is something that gives me subject of reflection. It's been always the woman figure, and perhaps it's because of the role women play in societies that are struggling to overcome poverty and discrimination. My great-grandmother had to support her family. She didn't have a choice. But I did have a very supportive great-grandfather, but I wouldn't say that he was instrumental or that my great-grandmother had a father that was instrumental. In fact, I don't recall from our stories who her father was. I don't think my great-grandmother ever mentioned to me her father, which is very interesting.
Wow.
So I wonder whether whether she grew up with a father, you know?
So now also I have, I wonder if she empowered you, did she empower your mother?
A very important question. Well, I think in my family, empowerment skipped one generation. It skipped my mother a little bit. And I think maybe the seed got to me just so I can go back and help my mother. My mother is probably one of the reasons. So my great-grandmother was the seed of inspiration and transformation. And I think my mother was the seed of, I have to fix a lot of the things in the world. You know, while my great-grandmother said you can do it, my mother said there's a lot of work to be done. And I think my mother was the figure that demonstrated that women needed empowerment, that women needed a voice, that they needed to act on their power, that they needed education, they needed to be driven by something greater than I don't know, family responsibility or societal responsibility, that inner power. My mother didn't really have a choice, I guess, to really work on her inner power. She had to feed her children. And so pretty much everything else was left into the hands of the divine.
So probably she was able, I think maybe the relationship with a grandchild is different.
Right.
The age being a grandmother, you are more relaxed, more able to connect. Or maybe she was able to connect with you as a person.
Yeah, it's so true. My mother had a lot of work. My mother couldn't afford to think about the greater vision for life. She was in a survival mode. She had to move from one day to another. She had only primary education. She raised 2 children during her first 30 years, and then she had twins at the age of 40. She had a lot on her plate every day, and because of the little resources she grew up where she had, the little education, the little guidance and knowledge, her survival mode dictated that she's got to raise her children, and that meant, you know, feeding, clothing, putting them through school, and that was my mother's job. Where my great-grandmother, I think she was in a very different kind of shoes, where she could look to the future and say, what is it going to happen with these children if they don't really continue education, if they don't really know where they belong, if they don't really look into the future and search for what they're meant here for. But so yeah, that was my great-grandmother. My mother's job was complete different.
So in your opinion, what transforms women? What is that thing that, because I noticed in your organization, you really transformed many of these women. My first impression was, wow, how these women has been transformed. I mean, when I look at them, I think they are just even, you know, they were transformed. The way you hear about their stories, their background, to come up the way you know, they end through after your training, or so. I want to know, what do you think is the power of transformation? Where does it come from?
It's another very deep question. I think there is a lot to that, but if there is one word that can help everybody understand what possibly could, and it may not work for everybody, but I think we have a process at Empowered Women International that is driven by a lot of exceptional women that are waking up every day to be in the life of another woman who's searching for her inner force, right? So I think what we're working at is to develop confidence. Now, confidence is not something one necessarily may be born with or is given overnight. It's a process of transformation, as you're saying. And I think at the basis of that transformation is inspiration.
Okay.
And it may not be true for everyone, but it seems to be the truth that I'm discovering. everybody that I meet, wherever I meet, whether it's in the United States or around the world, when I have a chance to talk to women in particular and to share my story and to share my journey and what I believe and what I've learned, I see that everybody's looking, their eyes are lighting up when we talk about personal things that they connect with. The inspiration, the seed of inspiration grows inside, which actually gives them permission to act on their own passion. We all have passions and dreams and ideals, and we grow up with them. We know them as young children, right? You knew what you wanted to be when you were 3 years old, and then 7 years old, and so on. But down the road in life, things become very difficult. Life changes gears from left to right. You move from one country to another. Your status changes. You may be wealthy at some point. You may be poor at another point. You have education. You may lose the opportunity to exercise your right of exercising that education depending where you live and what kind of status, right? So life is changing, and I think all those layers of complexity and experience somehow chip away or deteriorate that the glow within, the what I wanted to be when I was a young child, the inspiring seed of becoming somebody one day, right? And so when women reach Empowered Women International, suddenly we're listening to that seed of inspiration, what they want to be, what they want to do with their life, and we validate their purpose, and that gives them permission to act on that purpose. So in other words, it doesn't matter if the mother-in-law, if the father, if anybody gives them permission, they are granted inner permission to act on their passion. And I think once that happens and women go out and do the things that they want to do, it's not for the money, it's not for anything else, but just because they gotta listen to that voice within, the confidence is rising. Once the confidence is risen and the women own that, then they give back. And this is where we see the ripple effect, the multiplier effect, right? So once they're inspired and they have permission to act on their passion and purpose, then they are confident and then they give back. So you see, it's a cycle. And that's exactly what you see in every woman at Empowered Women International. We're a small organization, but we're mighty in our way in which we seed, we self-seed our spirit of service and community and empowering other women to follow their own inner voice.
During her 13 years as the CEO of EWI, Marga's passionate and visionary leadership turned the organization from a volunteer-run program to an award-winning organization with more than 3,500 supporters, over 2,500 women beneficiaries, over 300 micro businesses started by immigrant and low-income women, and more than $5 million generated in-kind professional services. I do believe that immigrant women go through a very unique and challenges that is not well understood by society. There's a lot of hardship. I can't speak about myself. I went through so much. I mean, I get education, I try to volunteer, I try to work, but still I see doors closed. I do see challenges. I have family, I have kids. I feel at one point, I even felt at one point that this society is not built for me. You know when you feel this way? So, okay, that's fine. I'm good at reinventing myself. But when you think of average people or people who probably don't have English language or don't have education, how do they survive? I mean, they go through a lot. And when you limit their opportunities, how about their children?
Right.
And you oppress, you suppress the energy. And I think this affects the school, affects their education. Probably to make them have a voice, it takes many generations to make these immigrant families. They need many generations to feel okay. So, I mean, why this is, I mean, I feel, I have this question about American society now. Why the American society does not offer enough help for those immigrant families? the only thing that I see is free English language in the library, free English language in the church, free food. What's else? I mean, is this really? With you, I think you created a system. You understand those women. You know how to make them feel comfortable, welcomed, open up, work on their own, improve. So how can you communicate this to the American society?
Well, I think it's yet another complex issue. I personally believe that we have resources. There are resources that immigrant families can access. The trouble is, as with every immigrant, or particularly talking about immigrants now, people don't know where to begin. By the time you learn about the resources available to you, it's too late. You might have already moved in another state, or maybe you're sick and you don't know where to seek health insurance for your issue and you're getting sicker. There are many from language barriers to isolation, to not having a car, to not simply understanding and feeling embarrassed, and people don't seek out, and not everybody. I mean, it appears that everybody has a computer or a phone and internet, but quite not everybody has that. I mean, now I know people have phones, but even that, they just don't know how to research for resources. Also, because with the places where we come from, in our countries, we don't have those resources. If you're poor, you die poor kind of thing. In America, there are resources, but people don't realize that there is something to hook onto. There is something to get it going with. They don't know the organizations that exist to support them, the faith-based community, the educational. You're very fortunate, and myself too. I love public libraries. I love everything about libraries, the smell of the books to the bookmobile that comes through the neighborhoods. And I thought, oh my Lord, this is the place to thrive. And yet with all this, many immigrants still do not know how to reach out. And I think that's why it's important that people like you and me need to serve, need to give back. We need to be the voice. You know, there is no day. I'm like a proselytizer. Wherever I go, I speak about the work that I do. I speak about the importance of reaching out, the importance of helping your neighbors, the importance of mentoring other women. Sometimes you're at the bus stop, and you spend 10 to 15 minutes and you see people sitting where they're reaching out. It's important that we put those cell phones down and we talk to people, because often those are the people that need most help. And I think it's as simple as that. I mean, I tried over the years to find kind of systemic ways to change. So once you entered Washington, D.C. airport, you pick up this flyer, that flyer, this brochure, that brochure. It didn't work. And it doesn't matter how many things you put in, how many strategic places. People have to own their own journey. People like you have to get out and reinvent themselves. And to be honest, you're right. If you don't have that kind of attitude about you, you get lost.
And most people don't.
And the majority of people have the tendency to get lost. But then you have organizations like Empowered Women International that exist in those communities. And we try to place ourselves in communities where you have most immigrants, more low income, where kids are going to schools in neighborhoods that there's low income families. So we can catch, all this community, so they can see us, so they can find us. But we're small. Of course, we need more of us. We need more volunteers. We need more entrepreneurs. We need more women to serve and give back. There is no systemic way to help everyone. It is very much, that's why I keep saying it's the power of one.
If you're an immigrant woman or a refugee, Marga wants you to know about her organization as soon as you enter the country. If you have been living here for a while, don't hesitate to reach out to Empowered Women International. Most of their students receive full scholarships based on their financial needs. Also, Marga wants Oprah to know about Empowered Women International. I asked her why.
I think she's an inspiration. She's somebody who has the stamina, the power, the voice to inspire others. And as I was a we were a very small, we're still a very small organization. Empowered Women International is small. It's small in its size, it's small in its finances, but it's mighty in its vision and mission and in impact. I think we need to be discovered by somebody as inspiring and as prominent as Oprah to really get the visibility, like all those immigrants to find us, and find us when they enter the country, not when they can no longer take it. So that's the vision, and hopefully she finds us.
Thank you so much, Marga, for being with us today here, and thank you for all what you do for women.
Thank you, Hanan. You have inspired me.
Thank you.